Hello there. Welcome to In the Lab. I'm Drew Dougherty. You're John Harris, and you are you. Thank you, for joining us. It's the three of us here on this little old podcast that John is coming up on 7 years of age. We started this
Ooh,
in 2018 in the season, I believe, right? I think
I
we
believe it was. Yeah,
was like,
I
hey, we
believe
need
it
to try
was.
doing this. And maybe it was 17. I don't know. Maybe it's coming up on 8 years, but nonetheless, and I think it was 17. Anyways,
Yeah.
point is, we've done this a long time, almost on a weekly basis. There have been some times where we miss a few weeks in some odd
Yes.
spots, but man, every week during the season, most weeks in the off season, and this is the last one we'll do because I'm leaving. I'm headed to a new gig. We shooting this on Thursday, releasing this on Friday. I am going to go to my alma mater, Strake Jesuits, where I graduated high school back in the 90s. And it's not kind of, it is a place that shaped who I am. A lot of what I did TV wise was kind of drawing on the shenanigans that I did back then at SJET, Strake Jesuit Educational Television. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be running SJET as the director there and then teaching some history classes, which people around the Texans joke, man, that guy's always teaching history. He's always blabbering on about this. So hopefully it's a nice, seamless transition, but I'm really excited. This is a prayers answered type of situation. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss this podcast. I'm going to miss a lot of things about the Texans, but it's just such a fantastic opportunity. And I've talked about this offline with you a bunch, and you've been such an awesome supporter of mine, and I'm pumped. I'm really pumped. August 4th is my first day on the job. August 13th will be my first day in the classroom. So I'm sure shenanigans are going to ensue over the next few years, and can't wait, man.
Yeah, I got a feeling that in a good way, you'll hear from me on August 12th, the night before, because when you think about going to that classroom for the first time and you see all these youthful faces, there'll be that moment of, oh God.
Yeah.
But I went through that as a 22-year-old, and I was teaching some kids that were literally 2 years. I mean, I taught some kids that are now 50, and it's
Wow.
kind of mind blowing in a sense to think back. And there's there are so many things to say, and try and say it without kind of breaking up, which I'm doing now. But when you came to me with this podcast, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of mad at you. I was like, dude, I've got like all these radio shows that we're already doing. Like, why the hell are we doing a podcast now? Like, what the hell? But I was like, it's Drew, so it's gonna be awesome. So just, shut up and go with it. And the first one that we did was some incantation of, if you could take two former Oilers and put them on the Texans, who would they be? And all of a sudden I was in. I was like, okay, this is the concept of our podcast. We're in, because we got to geek out and nerd out. And I knew
Yeah.
I would always be happy because I was doing it with you. But the flip side of that was, I remember coming home and kind of telling Paige about it. She's like, well, is that too much? They're already asking you to do this, this, and this. And I was like, babe, it's with Drew. I was like, it'll be cool. It'll be fun. It'll feel like we're just, chopping it up about, former drafts, redrafts,
Yep.
um, you know, comparing foods to superheroes to Texans, and it'll be fun. And I'm one of those, and I don't want to be this way, but I always think about, you know, I never want to think about the end, but I do, because I think about, like, I love doing this so much. Like, what's that last episode like?
Yeah.
What's the last radio show like? What's the last game like, in some sense? And it's always kind of frustrating to think that way. And then you're like, nah, it'll be okay. Just kind of roll with it. And then, when we had determined, I'm out in LA.
Yeah.
They came out here for my daughter's birthday, and well, it's twofold. I came out here for my daughter's birthday, and then I got hired by Page Harris Incorporated, to drive all of her painting stuff back, which I have no idea how I'm going to get all that stuff back in our car, because I drove it out here 4 years ago for them to have out here, and so now I'm driving that car back. Either way, so I got it for double reason, and then you and I had talked because you had been out, And then I came here. And so
Yeah.
then you sent me a text and said, yo, let's do in the lab. And I just remember it hitting me like, okay, this is the last one. And I was
Yep.
like, damn. So I will hold it together as best I possibly can. I know you and Mark, are sitting down on Friday for a segment for radio, but I'm gonna play this Thursday on radio too because it's you and me, and we are the nexus of in the lab. We are in the lab, and so I will play this Thursday night after John McClain, as I typically would do throughout the week, and it was always so much fun doing it. I don't know if there were times, even in 2020, 2021, 2022, when it was like, what is going on? And you and
Yeah.
I would put on a brave face and get on the mics and put the cans on and just start talking about Texans and start talking about wild stuff with the Texans and, think and dream of a day when it would get turned around. And then it started to in 2023. And, you and I within the lab, we started, we celebrated that. And it was always great. I cannot think. And I remember I was the first one, I think, that put the bug, and you may have had others, but I remember when you and I talked, probably a couple of years ago, just, about the future and such. I remember thinking, because I always think about, I spent my first 7 years in private schools. And I always think about, if somebody came to me with some sweetheart deal and wanted me to be the headmaster of a school, I'd have to put together a staff and, what I want on my staff and all that kind of stuff. And you've always been one of those people at the top of my list that I would immediately say, okay, what would it take to get you to come over to this school with me? Because there's so many things that you need at a school, and kind of like, JJ Watt in a sense, how many of those can Drew fill? Well, he can fill this and this and this and this and this. And he's a guy that I trust and love inherently, so he would be perfect. And so, when you told me that this opportunity was available for you and that you were taking it, I was just like, I was pumped, and I was pumped for you. I was pumped for the kids that you're going to be around every single day, and who they're learning from. It's just, it's the perfect fit in my mind for you. I just, hate the fact that, you and I won't be able to do in the lab every week, amongst other things. But since we're on in the lab, we'll start with that one.
Yeah. No, it's really fun. It kind of came about a couple months ago because my
Yeah,
wife Nita had the great idea. She's like, "Why don't you try and do a summer sports media camp, like a day camp
yeah,
from 8 to noon, Monday to Friday, 1 week, and you can take some field trips and you can have some experts talk to the boys and
yeah,
pitch that idea to the folks at Strake Jesuit." And I had pretty solid list of guests that came in and
yeah,
places we got to go and things that they got to see. And I think that got some wheels turning in the minds of the folks over there. And
yep,
it all came together pretty quickly in May. And yeah, I'm headed back, and it's a really competitive place. I mean, it was always who's
yeah,
the fastest, who's the smartest, who's the funniest, who's
right.
the best at this, blah blah blah. So it's gonna be fun to get back there. I did the Dear Drew videos there for a few years, and that was SJet, man. That
Yeah,
was us screwing around back when I used to interview the homecoming court, and we had them saying goofy things
yeah,
in the mid '90s. I mean, it's really fun. It's really a great place, and it's changed a lot, as you would expect, over the course of
of
30.
course.
But in some
Yeah,
aspects, it hasn't
yeah,
changed at all, and that's
right.
that's the exciting part about it for me. So I'm looking forward to going there and looking forward to meeting and reconnecting with some people who were there when I was there, who taught when I was there, and then there's a whole
That's always a fun one. That when you
really talented
when you
people.
walk in,
Yeah,
and here's one of the things when you when you're out of school, it's always, coach. Now, coach is easy because for me, like, I call anybody that's a coach, I call them coach.
sure.
It's always been coach. But when I had math teachers, Mrs. Hahn, my English teacher is Miss Phelan, Miss Morris. Like, I would see them as an adult. Like, I went to go do a speech. My English teacher, Miss Phelan, Maxine Phelan, was getting a school named after her, and well, I should say they were trying to get her, and so they were like, "Hey, would you come speak about her for 5 minutes to the school district?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I went in, I did that. That was in 2019, so it was before COVID. So they go this long stretch of time without. Anyways, um, she gets to school, and they were like, "Okay, we're going to dedicate the school on this day. Would you come out to Richmond Rosenberg and dedicate this or speak to everybody. And I said, absolutely. And I see her and it's like, hey, Miss Phelan. And I'm like, here I am, nearing my 50s and I'm calling my English teacher still Miss Phelan.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it's going to be like to maybe work next to some of those people that had called, Mr. Hall, Miss Jones, and all of a sudden you got to say, hey, Catherine, it's going to be an experience.
Coach Crowley.
Man.
It's Coach Crowley. There's a guy.
Yeah.
He's closest thing to a big brother. He was my cross country and track and field coach. He taught history when I was there. Since then, he's been the athletic director. He's been the dean of students. He's taught other classes. He's had other administrative roles. He's the athletic director again now. He was instrumental in making this all happen. But I still call him Coach Crowley, and
always
say that around people there now, and they'll kind of turn their head like, "What?" No, he's a coach.
Yeah.
That's my coach.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a coach. But I think most of them know him as Mr. Crowley or Mike, whatever. But that's coach to me. So I'm looking forward to getting back, and it's going to be really, really fun. Still going to be here on game days. I'll be up in a press box booth helping out some of the folks on the game day entertainment side. And
nice.
There. So, and you and I are going to be. I'm going to be hitting you with random texts here and there. Reciprocate, and we might have some other little ventures cooked up a time or two in the future.
You never know. Never know. Yeah, it's funny because you never say never.
Yeah.
I think I learned that actually at a private school. I remember when I was leaving the private school, I just remember thinking, okay, that's it. I'm never doing that. I remember my wife saying, you never know. You never know what might happen. And so when I got to Houston and started doing radio in 2007, I wasn't making a lot of money with it, and not as much as I thought I was going to make. And so not a new school, but a school that had been open was opening a high school and called the Village School over on the west side.
Yeah.
And they were opening a high school. And I remember my wife was going to apply for, some sort of position. Obviously she grew from being, part-time art to basically like the second or third in command over there. I mean, she was instrumental in that place. And so I remember thinking around going, I wonder, male math teachers aren't the easiest thing to find. I wonder if I offered up, kind of a part-time thing, would they let me teach in the morning and then I go do radio in the afternoon? And they were for it. And so I went right back and I did it for a couple of years where I was teaching in the morning and then I was doing radio in the afternoon. So it's like one of those things where you never say never. And, it's like with in the lab, that it may not be the last one. It might be, it may not be, may not be the last time you hear Drew and I together. Maybe it may not be, it's kind of that fun thing. You never say never. You never close doors. And obviously when you, have people you love, you always tell them you love them. And you're one of those people that you are family to me and to the Harris kids. I know when Jack always came in the building, there was a time where Jack was coming to the building with me a lot because school was not going well. And I remember you would walk in, hey, Jack, and Jack would just light up. And you were always great with him. So I can imagine these kids are getting a great one, man. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes and what that's like for you. But this podcast has been, sometimes you'd walk in and you're like, okay, what are we going to do with the podcast? And you're like, yeah, just dance with me. I'm like, you'll know what to do. I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. And then those would end up being some of the best in the labs because we would redraft, catch-ups or, Texans that could have gone to other places or came from other places that should have been Texans and, players from the city of Houston that went to other places that would be Texans, all that. So it was always kind of fun because it always like piqued my creativity and my thought, about what could be, as opposed to what was or whatever the case might be. So it was always really good to do that.
Okay. So let's talk about a few of my favorite things that what we used to do together that we did here. So I loved road trips.
Yeah.
Like when we'd get some dinner. Sometimes I didn't always go out to dinner with you guys because I've got family in different places. I got friends in there, so I'd meet up with them, blah, blah, blah,
sure.
blah. Sometimes I just stay in because I have 48 children at home and I'm tired. I've got a little bit of a cold and I need to sleep. Okay?
Yeah.
What I love, the things I love the most about road trips was after the game, getting on the plane, not the bus, but the plane. Because inevitably, I'd either be sitting in your row with you, right by you, and breaking down what just happened, but good or bad, and lots of good times because you've been with us since 14.
Right.
There were lots of good times, lots of bad times too. But I love just like the behind the scenes. Like, I mean, did you see this
Yeah.
14 quarterback hits and like
Yeah.
going through things and breaking it down kind of the way you and I would break down just and like the little offshoots and what happened here. And this guy said this
Yeah.
here and I heard this and blah, 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 blah. I love that. That it was that time right before takeoff as you
Right.
bag up, you sit down and just like that sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, in
Yep.
between, put your stuff up and talking. The behind the scenes, like the info and the kind of the filler material that you got
Yeah.
so rich in those times. I love those.
It was really the first time on that Sunday or whatever night we were playing that you really kind of let your hair down because you and I, even on the bus to the airport, you and I would be cranking out some sort of article.
Like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, because
Yeah, like
you're like
just
typing like this. Yeah. And
invariably,
I hope that scene right there that they got, I hope that's the thumbnail for
yeah, because you're literally just clacking keys and you got like people next to you. You're trying to send it and you're okay, how much further do we have to the airport?
Yeah.
Okay, can I finish this? Okay, I got to send it. Do I have Wi-Fi? Who's got,
yeah.
who's got Wi-Fi? So we're actually working all the way up until literally we are getting off the bus to get on a plane. And it's kind of the first moment of like, okay, all right, what happened? And then you start going through the game and parts, the moments of it. And, invariably, we'd be, an hour into the flight and one of us, we might even still be working at that point. And one of us would kind of nudge the other like, hey, and we'd have this, we'll call it game book and all the stats.
Yeah.
I remember this one. We were coming back from Cleveland in 14 and we had beaten Cleveland. There was a lot of things that happened that day, but Watt was incredible, unbelievable. And I remember looking to you and I showed you the stat sheet and I was like, he's got a number in every column.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think,
and then of course there was the offensive
buffet.
stuff.
Pendergast, I think, called it hitting the statistical buffet. He got salad, he got Jello, he got fried
it was
fish,
amazing.
He got okra. He get everything every statistic in the game. And we've talked about this before on this podcast, but
yeah,
that was a fun one.
That was incredible. And so there was those moments on the plane, and also there would be moments. I remember in 2015, you and I were sitting next to each other, and we were on a plane. We got an email. And a lot of times this happens. We're on a plane going to a game. We're going to Jacksonville in 2015, and we were sitting next to each other, and we look down because we get the same notice at the same time, and it says J.J. Watt is questionable with illness.
Yeah,
and we just looked at each other like we're screwed. Like this is not good. And it was probably about 10, 15 minutes later, he comes rolling. At this time we sat at the front of the plane. He comes by us. He's got shades on, and you can just see it, and we're like, oh God. And it was like those things that we would see that we knew about. And I just remember you and I looking at each other like when we mouthed some bad words to one another, went on the field, he played the whole game. I remember he puked right on my shoes after A.J. Boye finished the game with an interception. He puked right on my shoe or right near my shoes.
Wow.
Just like exhausted. And it was one of his worst statistical games. But he played really well because Jacksonville focused everything on him. But I remember you and I would have some of those moments too, sitting on a plane and just seeing players go by. So what's Arian Foster wearing today? Oh, he's wearing an Indian outfit, and then DP would pipe in and go, yeah, that I like that. That my husband has that, or I have a friend that wears that, or something like that. It'd be like, okay, Arian. So it was always we always had those moments playing. So I always thought was kind of fun. You'd see a little bit of behind the scenes stuff.
Another thing I loved. Game days, sidelines. I wasn't always on the sideline road games. Last few years, I was on the sidelines for home games.
Yeah.
But road games, every once in a while, when the Texans would close them out, we take a selfie together.
Yeah.
I think it was that bitter, the coldest one I've ever been to. You've been to colder, but the coldest one I've ever been to was at Tennessee, I think 2-3 years ago.
22.
Yeah, day before Christmas. And
that was cold. That was my
yeah, that was a fun one. And then home games, a lot of times I just come up and stand beside you, while you're watching, I'm watching. But it was just always fun, being near you on those game days. And then also coming back from practices, I always enjoyed the conversation. And then every once in a while, we're walking, I'd kind of look over the side and see you walking, and then I'd start stepping on every single crack because it would erupt your OCD, and you're like, "Don't do this."
Uh,
And I go crack, crack, crack.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I get you going. So
I am very OCD that way, and so I step over cracks. I do not want
and like a jerk, I noticed.
crack in my yeah.
Yeah, I would.
And so I just remember one day you stepping on all. I'm not saying anything at first, and then finally you said something like, hey, I'm stepping on these cracks, and I finally was like, you are doing it on purpose. God dang it.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was that used to like, man, he got me. But yeah, it was and I think that's what so life's supposed to be, man. You feel every single emotion every single day, and the people that make you feel those are the ones you keep the closest to you, and you definitely have been one of those since even before 2014. I remember it was funny because when I went to the initial Bill O'Brien press conference in 2014, I remember you came up to me and you were like, "Hey, do you think we're going to do more analytics? How do you think this thing goes?" Like, knowing that I knew Bill, you were trying to. And that was really kind of the first time I think we maybe met before that, but we kind of chit chat at that point. And a
yeah.
few months later, you were unfortunate enough to have me in your building,
Oh
a
man, it was awesome.
former O'Brien disciple, like near you. But yeah, it was always the ideas we had in the lab. One of the other things that we got to do was Texas Bowls,
Love
Texas
those.
kickoffs, and you and I
Yes.
would be up on the board, and that was always a good time. I always felt bad for people. You have to see my big head up there, but we would
Those
get
are fun.
texts from people like, "Hey man, I'm in the building," and then they'd send
Yeah,
a picture of you and I, and my wife used to get those when she was at home, like, "Hey, I'm in the building. I saw your husband with Drew," and so
I love that. We
it was always kind of funny.
we did probably 20 games combined
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
together, and I think half of them either involved Mike Leach and or Dave Ferguson, which is awesome. We love both of them. Man.
Yes,
Rest in peace.
yes,
But it was
yeah,
fun because we knew the game, college football, but I
yeah,
knew a lot of background on those two guys, so it was
yeah.
just
You did.
more fun to
Yeah,
talk about. And the other guys were cool too from the other teams, but
yeah,
those two in particular, we loved those conversations about and
yep.
everything that came along with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that was great. That
Well,
was
we
great.
could go on and on forever. You're a dear friend. I've loved doing this
Yep.
podcast. We hope you have enjoyed watching or listening to this podcast over the years. It's been a lot of different things, a lot of weird things, and I'm gonna miss doing it.
Yeah,
It
man.
was always a thrill to do this. It's always a fun part of my week, and like I said, we might have something cooked up down the line.
Yeah, you never know.
Love you very much, and I will see you
Yeah,
again
man.
soon. I know you're a friend. You're not gonna. We're not saying goodbye. We're just saying so long
Yeah,
right now, and
right.
be safe coming back to LA or coming back from,
Yeah,
and just don't step on any cracks. Okay.
yeah. I'm so glad that I got up. I woke my ass up to in LA because it's still dark 30 around here. So,
Uh-oh.
yeah, it was good, man. But I appreciate it. And the first crack that you step on as you're walking down the hallway, you will have a chuckle thinking of me. So that's good.
Indeed, I will. All right. This has been In the Lab, presented by Xfinity, one final time.